Hi guys, if you're watching this video, you're probably thinking about moving to Boston. In today's video, I'm going to talk about 5 of the things I hate the most about Boston. In general, I'm a pretty positive person, but today I'm going to go into the dark side and tell you what I hate about this city. My name is Frank Carroll of the Frank Carroll Homes team at Compass. Please be sure to like my page, comment on my posts, call me, text me, or email me anytime to discuss buying property, renting property, listing your property for sale or for rent, for my marketing plans and ideas. You can always reach me via this contact information, and it is my pleasure to help you. So, the first thing I hate most about living in Boston, you guessed it, is weather. Nobody likes living in a climate that constantly changes. It's unpredictable. You can't pay attention to the weather forecast because it's usually not correct. You can't know your forecast more than one day ahead of time because it changes widely. There's a lot of times where we get a blizzard or snowstorm prediction and it turns out to be nothing because the region we're in is very coastal and very variable with the weather, so it could change and be very unpredictable. So it's kind of like a way of life here to have multiple layers of clothes to either put on or take off at any given time. The other thing that goes hand in hand with the weather, it is a very windy city. I think Boston should be called the windy city, not Chicago, especially if you are near the water in the Seaport area or South Boston or East Boston. The winds can be brutal. So the flip side is we do have a lot of good weather days, but be prepared for very harsh winters, a lot of snow, having to shovel your car out, having to deal with space savers if you live in an area like South Boston where people shovel their own cars out and then expect to pretty much own the space for a couple of days anyway. So there's definitely some peculiarities of living in Boston that are weather related. The other thing I do not like about it, weather related, is the sun sets very early in the winter and only has a late sunset in the summertime, so be prepared for very short days as well, which means temperatures can be warm during the day and then rapidly fall at night to anywhere from 60 degrees in February during the day, and then at night it can be 20 degrees. So you can imagine all the complications associated with living with this bad weather in Boston. The second thing I really hate about living in Boston is the public transportation system. First of all, it closes at around 12:30, 1 p.m. or 1 a.m. every night. So you do not have a 24/7 public transportation system, so you have to be prepared to take Ubers if you're going to be out late at night. Also, there's very indirect ways of getting from A to B. So there are a number of train lines, the green line, the orange line, the blue line, the red line, but they don't really get you to everywhere you need to go. So you have to constantly change from buses to trains to ferries to whatever. So be prepared if you do not have a car to have not only an indirect way of getting there sometimes, but also the train shutting down earlier than you'd like. And because of the bad weather, which was my first thing I don't like that much, the trains can shut down during a really heavy snowstorm, and the trains tend to break down sometimes in between stations and whatnot. So it is definitely, is one of the oldest train systems in the country, if not the oldest train system. So it needs a lot of work, and there's usually construction going on, and it's not that clean, some of these trains. So anyway, it's not my favorite way of getting around. I would say that I prefer to walk or to drive places, and if I have to take the train, I will. But it could be kind of a drag, and there's definitely certain train lines that are known to be better than others. Like the red line is pretty good, but the orange line can be unreliable. The green line is above ground, and you're dealing with weather-related issues that could cause it to stop as well. So also be prepared for very crowded trains and buses during rush hours or during Red Sox games, concerts, the 4th of July fireworks. It can get very crowded. You may have to wait for a couple of trains to come by before you get on the train. The third thing I hate about living in Boston is the cost of living. That includes the cost of housing. Housing is very limited because you can't build as much in this city. It's an old city with a lot of landmark districts. The newest construction buildings are in the Seaport district or parts of the South End area or East Boston, and those tend to be expensive because they're brand new. So you have to basically have the budget to be able to live, or the income to be able to have the budget to live here. So definitely be prepared for high rental costs, high housing costs. Rental prices average in the 3,000 range across the city, and condos, and average around $1 million if you look at all the areas combined. So given that, it's definitely expensive, it's competitive to find housing. There could be bidding wars for renting and for buying. It's important to have an agent like me who has access to a lot of listings and early access to places for sale and off-market listings, because it's really crucial to get in the game and not have to compete with everyone else that has access to Redfin, Zillow, MLS, where it's just a feeding frenzy. So cost of living, coming back to that, housing, number one. Two, food is very expensive here. Shopping for food, especially now with inflation that's been recently occurring with the cost of goods, it's definitely costing a lot more to go out to eat and to go out food shopping. The price of public transportation is going up. Day-to-day expenses here are definitely high. So be prepared for that high cost of living here. The fourth thing I hate about Boston is a combination of driving, maneuverability, getting from A to B. Put that all in one lump sum. So traffic in Boston is really horrible. Ever since COVID, everyone's been getting cars and not using public transportation as much. So given people are working from home, the traffic is now pretty much all the time. I find that it's no longer the rush hour times of the evening and the morning commutes. Now it is all the time, especially given constant construction that's going on, whether it's road construction, new buildings that are going up, road closures, water main breaks, you name it. It is a city of constant construction, constant obstacles, drivers that are really mean, what we call masshole drivers, for good reason. They're very aggressive and unpredictable. The other thing that is not great with having a car or basically getting around in Boston is the streets are very confusing. There's very few grid-like areas. It's all kind of random cow paths from the 1700s turned into roads for cars, rotaries, complete randomness. So if you need to know where you're going in Boston, it's very confusing, not only because of the indirectness of the streets, but also the fact that a lot of the same street names are in different towns. So whenever I have a listing on a street that's a common name, there could be 5 or 6 of those street names in different places. So if you tell somebody come to 15 Hancock Street, they may put 15 Hancock and get Hancock Street in Dorchester and not Beacon Hill, and maybe Hancock Street in Cambridge, and maybe one in Watertown. So it gets very confusing to get around here, given that there's so many street names used repetitively. And then you really have to pay attention to the zip codes when you're figuring out where to go. And finally, the last thing I hate most about living in Boston is some of the people here leave less to be desired. It can be very cliquey, definitely. New England in general can be very cliquey, so people can be hard to make friends with because they have their circles, whether it's their work circles or their college circles or whatever it is, people that went to the same school, they're in the same industry. So it's kind of hard to make friends here. So you really have to be a little creative in that regard. But one thing I will say is once you make a friend in Boston, they are your friend for life. As going back to the negativity aspect of the people in Boston, I definitely think there are some very rude people here. I mean, definitely the drivers are rude. There are people you will encounter here that will be very direct and blunt, and they may be judgmental. When you're walking down the street, people are very opinionated. So it can definitely have that harsh aspect. I would have to say that there are plenty of good people here, but there are definitely massholes. So be prepared for that type of person and that culture here. So there you have it. Those are the 5 things I hate the most about living in Boston. I'm sure I have probably another 10 or 15 things that I hate about Boston, but I'm only going to limit it to 5 today. And I have probably 100 things I love about Boston, so let's keep it positive. But you need to know the nitty-gritty about what is good and what is bad about living here. I have been living here for a very long time. I won't say because it'll belie my age, but yes, I've been here for decades. So if you have any questions about living in Boston, about real estate purchase, rental, listings, I'm here to help. Please call, text, email me anytime, and also follow my page, like my page, and be sure to comment and ask questions and give me feedback. I'd love to hear from all of you, and also would love to hear what you'd like me to talk about. So please do contact me, and thank you for your time.